we're very optimistic about the fact that this region has not only a fantastic potential. I think there are other regions of the world that will give an arm and a leg to have the participation of industry and that we have in this region. So I just want to use this question to say and to confirm that we're very happy working together. I think we have a great future as a region, and we're complementing each other, and we look forward to continuing this relationship.
Let me add just a couple of points, if I may. My counterpart at UTEP just mentioned how we are working together. And I like to say that even if we were not working together, I think that the situation of research funding and how today the drive is to actually go for a consortium funding rather than single individualized PI funding will compel us to work together. And it's much easier to drive down to UTEP and talk to the faculty members or our faculty to go talk to them rather than go up north to UNM, because that's a 3.5-hour drive compared to a 45-minute drive. So certainly we have a lot of collaboration going on. In fact, this morning we just talked about one that's coming up before we even entered the room. Yesterday we actually signed myself and the Vice President for Economic Development, Gary Cruther, signed a letter of commitment that we are writing for a research to economic development sort of a proposal that's going out of University of Arizona in Tucson. I've been to Chihuahua several times. CIMAV is my favorite place to go to. I actually, CIMAV, yes. We also provided a letter of support to them so that if they get funding in a nano center that they're trying to create, we'll actually be partnering with them. We actually have joint degree programs, in fact, in engineering with the University of Juarez. And also we have academic collaborations with the University of Chihuahua. So yes, actually, I think more can be done, absolutely, but I think that we have been doing these collaborations for a long time, and we know the area on both sides of the border. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. The next question is right here, and we'll get to you next.
Yes, my question is for Mr. Chrétien, I guess. I was wondering whether, or if you have any insight into whether Mexico may open up lands for oil and gas exploration.
I think the short answer is yes. I think it will. I think that we have great expectations on the new government that is going to be some reforms in energy. I think that Mexico has to acknowledge that we need to change some of the legislation that has to do with oil and gas and specifically in energy, in energy sector, because the energy, the electricity, for example, is one of the elements that are really inhibiting our ability to attract more industry and to be more competitive. I think that we need to push the competitiveness agenda for Mexico if we want to continue to progress in the quality of life for Mexicans. And I think that energy is one sector that is inefficient, that is one sector that is close, and I think that has to be reformed. So to answer your question, I think it's going to happen. I think it may be wishful thinking, but I think that we have some comments from the elected president, Enrique Peña Nieto, that he is going to put the energy reform very high on his agenda.
Raymond, I think you got bumped. We're going to go ladies first here. We'll get back to you.
Thank you. Hi. I'm Kathy Swain, Director of UTEP's Clean Energy Incubator Program, which I just wanted to put in a plug for because sometimes we don't take credit for it, and I think we should. I'm also Executive Director of the Hub of Human Innovation, and so I just wanted you all to know we do have a booth here, and the Clean Energy Incubator Program is a very important part of what we do. And also to mention, thank you especially for mentioning the I6 Challenge Grant, the EDA Challenge Grant that NMSU, and want to acknowledge Kathy Hansen at Arrowhead and the work she did to win that award. And they were good enough to include us as a very small part of it, as you mentioned, Dr. Osagueda. So we are collaborating. Those collaborations are beginning, and I know speaking for us at UTEP, we're very excited about that. We also recently completed, to the credit of Gary Williams, a major research grant proposal with 7 partners that certainly included both UTEP and NMSU and the Hub and Arrowhead, and in an advanced manufacturing initiative that will also have, that we're very hopeful about. We should know about that soon. And that will have a significant impact over the next few years on our capacity and initiatives in commercializing clean energy technology. So that's really what we're all about, and I just wanted to put that plug in. Thanks.
All right, I think we have Raymond next up here. Jacob?
Thank you. That was a good lead-in for my question. Considering renewable energy, such as biomass and things like that, it will be putting a lot more CO2 into the air. I know that hydrogen and solar are a bit down the line, and I'm also aware of some research that's being done at Sandia Labs with General Motors and computer models that are being run here at NMSU about the use of other substances in catalytic converters, such as the use of palladium in place of platinum in catalytic converters, making them less expensive. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, and also on the possible commercial and industrial applications of new forms of removal of CO2. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I'm not necessarily an expert in renewable energy. I am an engineer. I worked in my good days in my life. I worked on high temperature materials for gas turbine applications, producing power, not for jet engines, but also for power generation. But I can tell you that the problem of carbon dioxide emissions is, depending on which feedstock you're using for the biofuel, is an important issue. So for example, if you use algae can use the nutrients, nitrogen and such are actually carbon dioxide nutrients. So actually it can convert, because it's a photosynthesis process. It will actually take these gases away from the environment and capture them as in the fatty acid, or the fuel that can be converted from the fatty acid. In terms of how other masses are doing, so basically I think that the entire equation of renewability should consider what does it take to produce the energy in the first place. And so as we have learned already, for example, in biofuels, if you use corn as a feedstock, it's not really viable to come up with energy that produce less emission than before. And of course, it also drives the food prices up, excuse me. So it depends on what source you use as a feedstock. But I think the bigger challenge is also we are doing deforestation. So every time we do more deforestation, we are taking these oxygen spewing plants away from, and carbon dioxide consuming plants away. And I think that's a very important area that we didn't talk about, of course. But planting a plant or using less energy so that we use our energy more efficiently, changing even light bulbs, for example. I was surprised to find that in Cuba is the only country where all the incandescent lights are all are replaced. And so if a country can go that far, we can do a lot of things in our own homes so that we don't spew that much carbon dioxide or other flue gases out into the atmosphere. But again, your question regarding the catalyst is out of my range of knowledge and expertise. So I'll let somebody else answer if they are in the audience. Thank you.
Any other question?
Is Ross Kennelly here? Yeah, we have, I heard Ross Kennelly will be here in the conference. He's the expert on catalysts, so he could give you the answer on that one.
I can introduce you, Raymond, to Russ. Who's next? Ms. Feinberg?
Hi, this question is for Mr. Creatine. I'm wondering what kind of workforce development training, if any, you have in Chihuahua around the alternative energy sector.
Yes. There is a, one of the approaches that we have for these innovation initiatives is precisely the formation of clusters in which companies, academia, and government participate together in one field. And there is one cluster for alternative energies. And we're using two training centers that we have in Chihuahua, the CENALTEC. There's el Centro de Entrenamiento de Tecnología Avanzada, which is the one that is providing some initial courses, to train some of the people. In addition to that, the academia also is getting together and putting together also some programs to incorporate in their curricula, subjects in issues on solar energy. So in terms of training, we're using the current training facilities that we have to facilitate some of that, some of those needs, for training.
Jacob, microphone right over here, please.
Yeah, this question I guess would be for any one of you or all of you. In the media, greenhouse gas emissions, as was shown earlier, they continue to be large emission concerns globally, but yet the scientific community has been somewhat under attack that the global warming or global greenhouse concern is not, fully factual. That could be due to lack of information or education going on, at least in the United States. I don't know about in Mexico. But what would the academic institutions do differently to, provide factual information to the citizens of the United States that indeed this is a concern that everyone should be, concerned about?
You want me to start? Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and again, it's very debatable which side you're on and everything like that. But I think the energy consumption is primarily driven by economics, okay, and that is going to be the main factor. The fact that major energy initiatives right now are measured with respect to the carbon footprint is a good start. In other words, you gotta reduce your consumption of the have a low carbon footprint, and that's a very important aspect. There's alternate forms of energy that are cleaner. Okay, for example, gas is a lot cleaner than the fossil fuels, and going one step at a time, that's what's going to make it happen. I think it is alarming what will happen, but that's the environment, energy and the environment always going to have to go together, and all those factors will be taken into account. What universities can do about it, I think to the extent possible, to the expertise within classical universities, I think all those topics are being studied all the time. What technologies can you introduce to have cleaner forms of energy? All that is happening. But in order to have a global effect, it's not just the job of one university to do. It's really a more broader effort that a lot of people need to undertake to be conscious about the problems and everything else.
Yeah, I think if I understand right, that there are no there is no argument against global warming. I think everybody understands and accepts that it does happen. The argument is whether it is man-made or natural. And, of course, I have my own views, which may not be suitable to anyone else's view, maybe here, and so on and so forth. But I think what the universities can do is to generate the next citizens, next generation of citizens, engineers, scientists, etc., and educate them in how to interpret the data correctly and what conclusions you can draw, and then how you can communicate that, not only to the community, but also, the scientific community, but also the community at large. Because, you know, unfortunately, if I see is that even in a country like ours, science is seen sometimes as something that is not of any use to common day purpose. And that's, I think, a very, very bad trend. I mean, if you look at everything we do from morning to evening, I mean, if it wasn't for science, we would be lost completely. I mean, yesterday I lost my mobile phone for about an hour, and I was shivering, basically, you know. So, I mean, you know, science and technology plays such an important role in our life on a daily basis, and yet we try to look at scientists with suspicion. And I think, I don't know where that's coming from, and I think the educators in general also haven't done a good job of communicating in the language that people can understand. So you're right, I think we can do a lot of things, but it's just not a common, I mean, it's not just a regional issue or problem, but it's a nationwide, and I'm afraid it's probably a worldwide problem.
The science is there for clean energy already. Technology is there for clean energy already. You see it all over the place. It's just waiting to a time when is it going to be economically feasible to deploy those technologies at a mass scale. If you think about the infrastructure issues, okay, just the fact that if you have electric vehicle, for example, cleanest form of energy you can have right now, but there are no charging stations, and it's still the cost of those vehicles is extremely higher, much higher than the regular ones. So I think with time, that's going to happen, a little step by step at a time. But I think from the point of view of universities, I think the science is there already of all most of the forms. Maybe it's the fine-tuning technologies to make new technologies more economically feasible for deployment, things like that.
I think I can make a comment on that about the university, but I think that the consumers are going to be very powerful, because I think that consumers are going to reward companies that implement, you know, policies that had to do with taking care of the environment. And I was in a meeting yesterday with some companies in Juarez that they were being awarded for being socially responsible, and they were talking about some of the things that they're doing in order to reduce the carbon footprint and other things, you know. And I think that some comments were made about the fact that, you know, consumers are going to reward companies that do something, and are going to punish companies also that, you know, continue to contaminate or that don't contribute to this. So I think that that's one thing that that business community is going to acknowledge and to do something about it.
Yes.
To talk about the built environment and how that is very inefficient, and are you guys looking at that as one of the major issues that you need to kind of overcome? I mean, we're so sprawled out, and it takes a lot of vehicle miles just to get to and from home. That's an energy efficiency component that I don't think is being really looked at as part of the problem. What do you guys think?
Well, that's a problem, I think, that, like he just mentioned, it's going to be consumer driven. I mean, so, you know, we have now a possibility of doing video conferencing, right? And we still try to fly. Now, there's a good reason for it, because I think a face-to-face conversation cannot be replaced by a video conference. And in my own opinion, I think that I achieve a lot more. But every time we fly, you know, we are putting a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So a technology will catch up maybe one day where the screen is very clean and the flying cost is so high that we can just afford to do that. And so we'll do more video conferencing. Same thing with, you know, driving in not in a single car, but maybe in a bus or a train or things of that nature. So in countries where there's a lot of population, such as China and India, if everybody has a car, you will not go anywhere. And so, you know, they have to go through mass transportation. In our country, we've been fortunate to have a lot of land and fewer people. And, you know, everybody wants to be independent. But, you know, as I think that both my fellow speakers just mentioned, the consumer-driven economics is going to take over. And hopefully before that, we will become more environmentally concerned so that we don't have to wait for the economics to catch up. But again, who knows?
Any other questions? Yes. Okay, ladies first, and then we'll get right back to you.
Okay. My question is the university doing anything to partner with public high schools or local high schools to get students at that level motivated into going into these fields?
Absolutely. I think almost every university that I can think of is engaged in what they call STEM education initiatives. So this is science, technology, engineering, and math. And by the last count, NMSU alone, for example, had more than 50 different STEM-related projects of various sizes that are currently funded through agencies such as DOE, Department of Energy, NASA, National Science Foundation, Department of Education, etc. So we are trying to do a lot in terms of reaching out to the students and also retraining the teachers to teach science and math. If you're interested, I can give you my business card. I have a list of things I can send you just for your information.
Just a short answer. We have pretty much 85% of the students to UTEP come from El Paso County. So the K through 12 is a huge customer of the university, and there's our stakeholders. So we have a large number of programs that we continuously outreach into the K through 12 system in El Paso. This is one of those areas where literally old high schools fitting to the university are within reach, within 30 miles of UTEP. So we do.
I just want to say that we have before I ask my question, we have a booth outside for the Research Center, Regional Cyber and Energy Security. It's part of UTEP. So I really like this type of conferences. We get a lot of awareness in energy plans and all that that's been happening in the region. So my question is, how can you, your institutions, organizations, can you improve that awareness to the general public? Because these type of conferences are really, I think they're geared towards people that work in energy. So how what can we do to increase that awareness to the general public that maybe they don't know we have that much solar resource, for example?
Yeah, I think we're doing a good job, and actually, I don't want to put Dr. Martinez on the spot, but that's one of the things he's doing extremely well, and with outreach activities with the community and the public and so forth. So it is happening. If you'll need more support, we can talk about it, how to improve it and stuff like that.
Just a point, I think New Mexico State being a land-grant institution, we are somewhat more fortunate in terms of reaching out to the public, because we have an outreach office in every county of the state, primarily geared towards agriculture type of issues. But again, the environmental changes are affecting the agriculture as well, and the environment is very important for agriculture. I had seen the Dean of the College of Engineering here, and I think I don't know if he's here anymore, but the engineering is now becoming more, they want to create, or they already have created now, the outreach and activities more fervently than before. And I think that there is an initiative campus-wide, not just agriculture, college, engineering, to do the outreach more and more so that we can reach the community.
Let me just add too that this whole field of communications about the environmental issues global, this is part of the communications department, and I know we have an award from USAID that promotes the communications in Indonesia about how to save the environment, what practices they need to do, and so forth. So it is an important area within the communications area, and I believe our Center for Environmental Resource Management does a good work with that too.
Yes, Jacob, right up here, please.
This is for Mr. Cheriton. Did I understand you to say that the state of Chihuahua was or has implemented a legal requirement for a certain amount of renewables? And if that's true, would it be done through CFE or some other mechanism?
Now, I mean, let me see if I understand your question correctly. You talk about the Center for Research of Innovation on Solar Energy, or? Yes.
Understood you to say that that the state of Chihuahua was going to implement the requirement for a certain amount of renewables. Maybe I misunderstood.
No, I guess, no, there's not a state requirement for a certain percentage of renewables. We are, complying, or we are, trying to anticipate the business opportunities that renewable energy is going to have, but, we don't have a state mandated, percentage or requirement.
In other words, I want to make sure I understand this. What you were talking about earlier is purely voluntary, where the companies are being rewarded for having done good things to reduce their carbon footprint.
That's affirmative.
Any other questions? Yes.
I would like to piggyback on the comment that Eduardo did. Are there any specific strategies to do something similar in Mexico? And what can we actually be done so that all of these energy programs efficiency can be actually start adopted over there? And what is the expected roles from organizations and institutions such as UTEP and NMSU in that process, if any?
Is that question directed to Alberto?
I'll open it up for the three panelists. I would like to hear what are the future plans for Mexico specifically, because I think we have a good understanding of what the plan is for the region here.
Yes.
But we really haven't heard about the details of any possible moves towards Mexico.
I guess, going back, I think that we see the opportunity that the Chihuahua has, the state of Chihuahua has, to implement or to launch initiatives that had to do with taking advantage of the solar radiation of the state of Chihuahua, the energy requirements for industry and for governments, and that so this law that is being passed this month is going to provide the framework, is going to provide the policies, and is going to provide the environment to deploy these kind of initiatives. So, and it is very high on the agenda of the state government, because we see these, as I said before, not only as an opportunity to come up with an alternative source of energy, but as a business opportunity. So that's basically how we're approaching these initiatives.
Just one thing to add. So from New Mexico State University, we have an international and border programs office, and they take the initiative in working with Mexico in various issues that are community oriented, education oriented, training oriented, knowledge based. They are not the only ones that are, this can happen at any level, at every level and every college, but they are primarily that's their focus. That Mexico is a focus for that institute.
Any other questions? Great, we're doing great on our time. I appreciate both Mayor Cook and Mayor Pro Tem Thomas for being here. I'd like to thank Alberto, Vimal, and Roberto for being here. I've got a few other housekeeping items I need to take care of. I saw Councilman Sword, Las Cruces City Council, come in a few moments ago, so I wanted to recognize him. He was also visiting with us last night at the reception. Obviously, we do have folks out here who have put up booths. Please stop by and talk to them. One is the ReEnergize booth. They're down there with their solar panel right outside the door here in front of Ballroom. 2 is the Hub of Innovation. They have multiple partners inside of their booth. Stop by, talk to them, find out what's going on and help promote what's going on in the region by knowing what they're doing. Also, as we move on through today and tomorrow, we do have a lot of interesting folks coming in from a lot of places. Last night we had one guest here all the way from New York. We actually have a representative here from a Fortune 5. It's 5, not 500, a Fortune 5 company. So as we move through the day, as I mentioned, tomorrow we'll have folks from Mexico City, Duncan Wilson Institute there, as well as just remembering that this conference, we're going to be talking about energy, watergy, and economic development. So we're going to have a little longer break than normal, but as soon as the break ends at 12:45, we'll be moving in to ballroom 2 with session 1A, and then we'll be moving into ballroom, meeting rooms 4, 6 with session 1B. We actually have Commissioner Rolando Pablos here today. He's the Texas Public Utility Commissioner. Unfortunately, we were going to have the former chairman and commissioner of the Colorado Public Utilities Commission also as a panelist, but unfortunately, he had a family emergency and won't be able to attend today. So thank you once again for being here. We'll have a little longer break than normal, but I promise you we'll start on time. Thank you very much.